Hello, everyone, and this is Glazer from Snap Judgments, the official Marvel Snap Zone podcast. And today we got OTA. I'm going to be honest, I'm away and I got a cold, so excuse my voice. Hopefully, everything goes through with this video really well. We're going to try and do this quickly. But who are we kidding? I've got over 15 decks for you with these updated cards. Updated cards fundamentally operate as new cards. They open up new archetypes. They are one of the best things about Marvel Snap. If you crave novelty and want new decks, I've got all the new decks you could possibly need, including at least, I think, 3 different decks that may be completely busted with the way things work right now. Before we get to those decks, though, first, why should you subscribe? Well, the first reason I think you should really subscribe is that we are the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. We have an episode that released earlier today on the Marvel Snap Zone YouTube. That episode has the top 10 tips of Marvel Snap. It's an episode I'm so proud of. I think it's excellent. In addition, we bring you more new decks than anyone. And we don't just bring you any old decks outside of the OTA. These are untested OTA decks, right? Because the OTA just dropped, but we bring you the best proven decks in the game before the meta catches up with them. That allows you to hit infinite, get your infinity borders before anyone knows what these decks do. It's a huge benefit to the audience, as we keep being told in the comments. So I'm really thankful for those of you who are subscribed, who do comment, who do like. It really helps us out with that YouTube algorithm. And honestly, it's free for you, right? You can help us out. You can help us grow at no cost to yourself, and we'll do our very best to provide you with all of the content you could possibly need regarding Marvel. Next up, the OTA balance changes. Let's look at what they are quickly. Forge goes from a 2-1 that gives +2 to a 2-1 that gives +3. This buff is gigantic because there are many ways to multiply that buff. I was pretty sure Forge was going to get buffed when Lady Deathstrike came out. I was hoping the buff wasn't to like a 2-2. The +3 power is much more relevant, and we'll take a look at more Forge decks than anything else. Shanna is the card we have the least decks for. She goes from a 4-4 with the same ability to a 3-2. That puts ones at every location. I think that this is fundamentally a parallel move. There might be a deck or two with her. We're going to look at those, but I'm not thrilled here. I'm not impressed here. And the last change is Crystal, who keeps her same redesigned ability of each player draws a card, but now instead of a 4-4, she's a 3-3. So she becomes a really great combo enabler, a way to make sure you see your pieces in very specific decks. We're also going to look at several Crystal decks. I think this is actually a really size buff for her. I'm not sure how good she is. That whole each player part of it is a huge downside, so we'll take a look. I think one of the Crystal decks, I'm almost certain, is completely busted. And I think we have a lot of great stuff to talk about with Forge. Without further ado, let us get to the newly great Forge. This is a deck I've been playing a lot lately, even before Forge was buffed. I really like the curve of Forge into Deadpool or Forge into Daken. Because if you play Deadpool, then Carnage, then you can Forge and Deadpool on 3 and follow that up with a kill on 4. Or sometimes you miss Deadpool, right? Deadpool is not always going to be in your opening hand. You'll know no Chavez here. What you often end up doing is you can Forge into Daken. At that point, you can play that Muramasa shard with some other stuff to kill it, and Daken's going to become a 3-12. 3-12 is absolutely absurd stats. The rest of this deck is reasonably self-explanatory. You kill stuff, you get big. At the end of the game, you're looking to do one of several things. You can have a cheap Deadpool, a cheap Death, and a cheap Taskmaster. I love when that happens on turn 6, by the way. You can choose to copy either the Deadpool or the Death with Taskmaster, and you basically, like, right? Sometimes the Death is cheap enough that you can just do Death and Taskmaster on turn 5. And in addition, on turn 6, your ideal goal, if you have a cheap, really cheap Death, or you've gotten your Dakin big enough and it's relatively safe, where you're big in several lanes. Sometimes the lane that Dakin is big in has extra powerful cards in it. Sometimes you're just wider than the opponent is, etc. You have a gigantic null to play. This is a deck that is waiting for X23. X23 will likely take the Yondu spot in the deck, which will hurt the Death a little bit, but that extra energy basically like makes up for it on several turns of the game and gets you out that extra Deadpool at the end of the game with a null, which is absolutely insane. So this deck I think is going to be really great because Deadpool and Daken are so freaking good with Forge. And if you start Deadpool at a 1/4, right? Like he's going to be 8/16 immediately. It's unbelievably powerful, and all of that power transfers over to either your null or your taskmaster. So I expect opponents to have to start playing Killmonger to answer this soon, but it should also, because you're killing so much of your stuff, be relatively easy to throw a priority. This could be a really meta deck. I think this is going to be really good, but I do think it needs X23 to reach its final. Deck number 2, Jolly Roger posted this. This is Lady Deathstrike deck. This is Jolly Roger good stuff. Fundamentally, what it wants to do is play Forge into Deathstrike. Now that'll be 6, killing all 5 power and lower things. That is your Silks of the meta. That is your Spider-Mans of the meta. That's exactly what you want. When it was 5, it was not quite enough. At 6, I think it is. This deck should be really good. It's your standard good stuff list otherwise. It just wants to get Zabu down on 2, hence America. I don't think Jolly actually had America, and I think he had Enchantress over Rogue. I'm not running a Zabu deck without America at this point in the game. So you want to get Zabu down on 2, and then on turn 4, you can drop Jeff and Forge, or Korg and Forge, I don't really care which, into a Lady Deathstrike that should be able to absolutely wreck the face off one of your opponent's lane. Rogue is here because Zabu is still a common meta card, and if you Zabu, and then they Zabu, and then you Rogue their Zabu, the game is over. You've won. You should be snapping when you have that playline. And then at that point, you can go like Rock Slide and Forge into Lady Deathstrike and other such similar, completely insane shenanigans to win the game. Everything else is fairly self-explanatory. If you have no choice on 3 but to play Forge, you can Forge into Absorbing Man. That's now a 4/8 Absorbing Man, which seems really good. And then the next card you play is going to get 3 also. That could be Deathstrike, but it could also be Iron Lad, it could be Rock Slide, it could be Darkhawk, it could be Jeff, right? That's a 2/6 Jeff, which is like, if you've ever hit Jeff with Iron Lad, you recognize how powerful it is. I think this deck, literally, an hour ago was mid, and I think that now it's a real contender. I think this is our friend Doug Pie. You need to check out Doug Pie's Twitch. He is the coolest person to hang out with, and he's the only snap player besides me from the Bronx. So all around, much love to Doug Pie. Doug Pie sent me this. This is very similar to a deck. I want to say Binks. I'm pretty sure Binks made, but I like Doug Pie's version better. It's basically saying, this one is similar to a Dex deck, I believe. He's got another one. This one is saying, I'm going to figure out a way to pump either Lady Deathstrike or Black Panther. That can be Shuri into Panther or Deathstrike, or Forge into Panther or Deathstrike with an extra Okoye and Nakia for, why not just get them bigger? And then I'm going to Zola them, and good luck stopping that. If Deathstrike is going to be huge, and she can be 6 from either Forge, she's doubled by either Forge or Shuri at this point. So she can be 6 from either one of those. She can be 7 from Okoye, and she could be 8 from Nakia. That's going to answer a lot of boards. You also have the nice Brood Absorbing Man backup plan. Feel free to go Brood in one lane, Absorb Man in another. And then at that point, you can just go Panther into Zola, right? Or you can go Panther into America and just lock out the game. There's also, not the worst idea in the world would be playing something on turn 5 like Forge, and then you can last turn still Panther or Deathstrike away one of their boards that they thought they were going to win. Seems like that's a really good play against something like Surfer. It's a really cool list. Doug Pie plays really cool stuff. You should, again, really check him out. Iron Lad operates as a backup everything. You almost don't care what he hits. He's so good hitting almost everything. You don't really want to hit Okoye, I guess, or Iceman at that point in the game. But Iceman at that point in the game could still hit a Sarah and win you the game. But he can be a free extra 6 power Deathstrike, right? He can be a 12 power Panther. He can be a Zola. So be careful if he's a Zola, right? He can be a Shuri. He can be Nakia and boost your whole board. He can be 18 power with a Brood. The Zorbaman probably won't do much, but he can be Forge. Right? And then you have that, and you can play your Deathstrike for 6 the next turn. There's a lot of really powerful things that this deck does. It's probably the best home for Deathstrike we found so far. Although, again, this last Jolly Roger deck maybe is contending now that Forge is significantly better. Let's see. All right, next up we have negative Deathstrike. This is where I thought Deathstrike was really going to land, and it didn't at all because like turns out if you were gonna win the games that Deathstrike's gonna win you with this deck, I feel like. Forge is just an extra like nice powerful piece in this, right? If you don't have Zabu, feel free to run card is now gone from my brain. If you don't have Zabu, feel free to run Psylocke in that spot. You'll be more or less fine. I feel like you need magic. I keep seeing this deck without magic, but like if you don't see negative and you want to at least not like if they don't snap and you don't want to run, you want to see if you can steal the game, snap later, then you're going to need that magic. It's your only real hope. Um, Look, a 3-5 or even better, a 3-7 if both are negated. Lady Deathstrike is going to win you a lot of games. Jane Thor is fantastic. I added a Darkhawk to this list recently on the theory that like I just wanted one more decent sized body for Mystique. Mystique can now copy Iron Man, Darkhawk, or Null, and any of these can be tossed around the board by Zola, which all seems really powerful. You've got Shuri. Look, there's worse plays in Marvel Snap than Shuri into Jane, right? Like if that's what you end up doing, like if you go Zabu, Mister Negative, Shuri, Jane, you're not going to be too sad, right? Like, or you could still go Shuri, Deathstrike. There's a lot of obvious plays here that have a fair amount of power. I finally ended up cutting Bast from the list. I think Bast is a great card for Mister Negative list, but there's just not space anymore. And if I'm running Jane, there is at least some downside versus like and several cards that don't get enough upside for me to really care. But this deck should be at least really solid for a negative deck. It should be a 50% win rate with a really high cube rate, as negative does. This isn't where I would go, but I'm reserving room for this to be better than. Uh, Sarah had the deck and Surfing deck, and I think this is a deck that really wants Forge. Because if you can get your original Brood to 3-5 and your Broodlings to 5 power, that surf, and then you can Absorbing Man that, your power is completely insane, right? You've got 15 power in 2 lanes that can all still get pumped by 2. So you've got 19 power worth of Broodlings, and you've got oh, excuse me. You've got 21 power worth of Broodlings if you can Surfer, and you've got 19 power worth of Absorbing Man clones. That's without Wong or any other shenanigans like Killmongering Nova. That's nuts. That's so powerful. You're gonna win so many games that way. Further, you can do that late in the game. This deck runs Sarah. And there's still like magic all over the meta, right? So like they magic you Sarah, you could still do a ton of shenanigans. And as covered earlier, Forge works really well with Dakin. I don't like Forge where he only has one real target, but this one of making Dakin a 12 power card, that can be a 14 power card again with Surfer. Um, I mean, look, he can be even more than that if you Surfer before you get rid of the shard, right? So let's say you get him to 6, and then you get him to 8 with Surfer, and then you discard the shard. Now you have a 16 power Dakin that they couldn't necessarily shun because he wasn't quite in range at that point. You can make it even higher with Nova, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, depending on card ordering. There's a lot to do here, right? There's a lot to like here. This has been my most successful Surfer deck of the season. I usually prefer the more control-y versions. And Shadow King is like amazing in the meta as long as Forge is actually as good as it looks. But I'm still not really seeing Shadow King. I get beat with Shadow King like once every 40 games. So if you're not seeing Shadow King like I'm not seeing Shadow King, then a deck like this is going to win you a crazy amount of games of Snap. Um, Wong and Surfer or Surfer and Absorb Men remain incredibly powerful. So even if you're just getting 15 power worth of Brood and then playing like a Cosmo or a Naked Decken, right? Like you still should have enough power to win with your Surfer combos going forward. This deck is great. Like strongly consider playing it. This is one of my favorite decks in the game right now. And I think it just got significantly better. I ended up cutting whatever to drop like Jeff or something for Forge. It's like it was a good card, but nothing that I felt like the deck was dying without because the upside of the Brood and the deck in plays is so high. J Hugs has been playing this move deck. This is the purer version. We're gonna look at. I have a totally updated version of this that's kicking all sorts of ass, and it's gonna get its own video soon because I got an Infinity ticket with it. Like my server is kicking butt with it. I've said to a few people on Twitter. Everyone's got like crazy win rates with the deck. We'll talk about that toward the end of the video because I think there is a change to make for it. But this is the J Hugs version. J Hugs is another content creator. J Hugs plays on YouTube if you want to check him out. He makes really great content, not as often as I do, but really great content when he posts it. So like it's 100% worth following him. This is a version of his list. I ended up cutting Lord knows what for Forge because I thought I was going to cut Hulkbuster, and then there was some other card. I was like, do I really need this? I don't think so. So basically, what you want to do is you want to like multiple man is the whole game, right? You want a multiple man, and you'll settle for a vulture. You can choose to either move them around with Ghost Spider, Iron Fist, and Heimdall, or you can choose to kill them with um, Venom and Carnage, right? And either way, like no matter what it is, you can make multiple man a 2/6, right? Before you kill him, or you can make him a 2/6, or you can leave him just as a 2 and move 8 power all over with Phoenix Force, but you're dragging that 6 or 8 power everywhere, right? And then he's another 8 power with Hulkbuster. Hulkbuster has the same power as Phoenix Force. There's a lot of ways to get to the same result here. I also have the Forge Dakin thing here because, like, why would you not? You've got the two kill cards. Excuse me, you've got the two kill cards, and having a 3 for 12 just seems really powerful. You could also throw that Hulkbuster on Dakin before you kill the Muramasa Shard. So like there's a play line that goes something like um, Forge into Dakin to make Dakin 7. Well, excuse me. Yeah, 7, right? Into Hulkbuster and play the Muramasa Shard elsewhere. So now you have a whatever, 7 plus 5 is 12. I can do math, I promise. I'm an English teacher. Sorry about that. You got a 12 power deck, and that you can then double by killing that Murmursa Shard just by dropping that Carnage. Then you have like the rest of that turn to drop a Vulture, and then you can Heimdall that away. You get like 13 power out of the Heimdall Vulture lane. You get like 24 power of the Dakin lane. You win the. There's a lot of plays like that with this. You can also just multiple drag a big multiple man if you go Forge multiple man like Venom, right? And then you play Phoenix Force on the next turn, you're still going to be able to drag that around plenty, especially because you have Heimdall in this deck to move it around one extra time. Remember not to play Phoenix Force in the left lane because, at least first, because that is going to lose you one force if you Heimdall. Deck should be really, really good. I think we're finally getting to like the actual classic move that they want to be good, not just the Owl God and Lambie versions, because this looks like fairly legit. Bounce and move. I've been trying to make this deck. This is like a pet deck. It's good. It stays at like a 52, 53% win rate for me. It had Medusa in it forever. Um, I decided that it should probably just run Forge because if I can forge a Human Torch or a Kitty Pride and move that around, that seems really good. This deck used to have Bast in it. Bast is the card I cut. Um, and straight up, I cut Bast because I I'm giving one extra power to everything but Hawkeye, who's probably already been played anyway, and Angela, who I want to get down right away anyway. So and I'm taking away a power from Beast. So it just didn't feel worth it. Whereas Forge, who can still bounce with Beast and give that +3 power twice on Human Torch or on Kitty Pride is absolutely game winning. If you can get that on a Human Torch, who's been moved once, you now have a 7-10 power Human Torch. You move that one time, you have a 20 power Human Torch. Good luck, opponent. That 20 power Human Torch is then supported by Kitty, Angela, Beast, Collector, all these other cards. Hawkeye, who easily becomes a 1/7. If the opponent doesn't have Killmonger, they're in a lot of trouble. This deck should actually be really good, but not quite as good as this one. D-Money's bounce deck is, I think, better now. Medusa gets +3 to herself. Forge gets +3 to whatever you want it to. I think the second one of those is better, especially because Forge takes better advantage of Bast. If Forge is a 2/3, he's fundamentally a 2/6, right? And then if you can bounce him, he's a 3/9 or something like that, which is nuts. Um, this is the first time I'm showing what my new favorite silly thing is. My new favorite silly thing, my new favorite silly idea, and this is the first thing I think that I came with that's broken. And all this the Glazer movie, all because everyone's going to be doing this soon. I think you can go if you can get this lined up. You can go Bast into Forge into Mysterio. You can do that toward the end of the game. That is now a 6 power Mysterio in every single lane. That's 18 power worth of Mysterios that are also pumping up Hitmonkey. You can also play Kitty on that last turn. If you beasted Forge, you can just do it straight up with Forge that last turn. You can go all 3 cards on the last turn of Forge, Mysterio, and Hitmonkey, pumping up your Kitty, pumping up your pumping up your Angela, pumping up your Bishop in the process, and that's a lot of power. It's 18 power from the Mysterios, right? Plus 1 power from the Forge, let's say 1, arguably. So that's 19 power, right? Plus the natural 2 on Hitmonkey, 21. Plus you're playing 3, 4, 5 cards. 3, 4 cards. So that's 8 more power. So now we're at 29. Plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus 5 on Bishop. Now we're at 26 plus two more on Angela. So now we're at least two more on Angela. So now we're at 28 power on the last turn of the game that comes completely out of nowhere without having initiative. Feels like that alone is enough to win a lot of games of Marvel Snap, right? Assuming you have like anything else going on, you've got a just demon sitting there or something. As always, be careful with your Bast and demons. It's the one thing that like everyone who plays this deck messes up sometimes. Also, be careful with your Hawkeye and demons. But like, if you can pull any of this stuff off, this deck is going to be completely sick. This might be the return of balance. Um, Again, this deck ran Medusa, but Medusa benefiting only herself is nothing compared to Medusa benefiting Mysterio. There might be, now that I think of it as I'm talking about it, even a version that is similar to of this deck that runs like Patriot and Mysterio and Brood, or like Mysterio Brood Sinister, something like that. But that kind of deck tends to want Iron Lad and Absorbing Man, and then it doesn't want Bast. Although just Forge into Mysterio is the same thing as into Mysterio, which is worth, and that like is still a 2/9. So there's a lot to really like here, a lot of power to this deck that like multiplies and goes completely crazy. I think this might be back. I almost like it as much as this one. I think this is like my new baby. I'm going to test the crap out of this. Um, I feel like I'm missing something here, but I don't know what because I'm not 1,000% sure I want Medusa. But this has the same basic game plan as the other deck, except it has a Sarah to really enable things. America Chavez or another card in this one might want to be a Wasp. I'm completely fine with that. But in this deck, I really, really, really want to see a lot of cards, right? So I want to see I want to see Angela Bishop on curve. I want to see Bast as soon as I can. I've got so much power to go over the top here. I want to see my magic. So I've got magic to like get an extra turn to make sure everything comes together. So I'm not even losing a draw from America. Although if I can go off on the last turn, I still can, right? Like I just have to know what my opponent is playing. That makes this a better conquest deck, but that's fine. Medusa is a 2/5, which is excellent stats with Sarah a 1/5. Like a last turn in this deck where you've already played Kitty and Bishop is completely nuts if you get Sarah down on 5, right? And you've got a 1 cost Medusa, a 1 cost for like 18 power Mysterio, that's 2. Then you've got 2 for Hit Monkey, that's 4. 1 for Forge, obviously, that's 5, and you could still drop Kitty. Jeez. So I think this is going to be an absolute meta deck unless Wave comes back somehow, because Wave will shut this down. Unless you can magic exactly on 5 and they're not running Legion, which doesn't seem impossible because the modern Wave decks don't appear to be running Legion. So you could always magic on 5, Sarah on 6, and do the exact same thing on 7. I don't know what beats that. This deck should be completely sick. I strongly urge you to try it. This is going to be like my baby as soon as this one of my 2 babies as soon as I get to actually play with these new cards because this looks sick. All right. Next up, we have Shanna the She-Devil, a 3/2. Not super excited about this, I'm not going to lie. I think that, look, she could already be a 3 with Sabu, right? And there's no way to make 3s cheaper. So now she just has an extra home of Surfer decks. But we also have Owl God's Discovery of Fire. We've shared this exact deck before. The idea is you either kill everything with, you get like Shanna out, Squirrel Girl out, Negasonic to kill the Shanna, so on and so forth. And then you can play Killmonger, and then you get a free death and a super powerful null, and you enjoy. It works well. You also have the backup plan of multiple men into Carnage, and then you can just drop yourself a nice old Phoenix Force and have multiple lands all over the place. Works totally fine. It's a good deck. Not a great deck, but it's a good deck. It does what it says on the tin. It's easier to play with Shauna as a 3 because now you can drop a Yondu, a Squirrel Girl, and Iceman with her. Have fun. You're going to fill up a lot of board that way. Be careful if they're playing anything junky. I looked at this deck and when I played it, I realized that a lot of how I was losing was I wasn't seeing Killmonger, right? Like you really need the order with Killmonger. But Deathstrike is like a pseudo Killmonger. Oh sorry, I just want to note. It says Shauna's a 4/4 because it takes a little while for all the deck trackers to update. That's fine. She's a 3/2. But so that means she would die to Deathstrike, which means it's really easy to kill 3 extra things if you didn't get that Killmonger. Or even if you did get that Killmonger down, now you can spend turn 5 killing some other stuff that you had in that lane, like Shauna, for example. Like you can kill a Shauna and drop that on top of a Shauna and a Negasonic and have a wonderful old time. And now you have a powerful null and death. You can also kill Negasonic, bring it back with Phoenix Force, and kill a couple things that way, and that'll help make your death cheap, and you can play your Null there too for an awful lot of power, because Negasonic has now died for 5 and 10, so your Null is at least a 15. Awesome, awesome plays. I think Deathstrike actually belongs in this deck in all likelihood over Legion, but I don't know. I think this is still probably a tier like 3-ish deck, but at least it's cool. Like if you want something cool to do and fun to do and you have these cards, this is somewhere to look. The only home that I think might be decent is something like this for Shanna. You should be able to fill every location relatively easily using Shanna and Brood and Absorbment. So if you played like nothing else, but went Brood into Absorbing Man, right? Now that's 2 lanes. Oh, sorry, you're gonna need one more card. So you'll need to have played like Forge in a different spot. And then you go Shanna. Shanna's 2 cards in her lane, and Surfer. Oh, sorry, Dazzler's the card I was forgetting. That's the whole payoff for this, right? So if you go turn 3 Brood, turn 4 Absorbing Man, turn 5 Dazzler into an empty lane, and then turn 6 you drop Shanna and Surfer, you've got an 8 power Dazzler and a whole bunch of power all over the board. Is that enough? Probably not, but it's a cool meme, right? Like that's all I got really for Shanna. And it puts her in a deck with Dazzler. Come on, what's not to love? This is like the OTA deck, right? Like it's like Forge is in it, and Dazzler's in it, and she was changed recently, and Magic's in it, and she was changed recently, and Zorbaman's in it, and he was changed recently, and Spider-Man's in it, and he was changed recently, and Shauna's in it. So like this is like the all OTA deck. It's probably fun. I don't think it's as good as regular Surfer. I'm not gonna pretend it is. I don't love the anti-synergy of Nova, Killmonger, and Shanna. You could easily cut that for some other 3 stuff. Where I would suggest you look is probably Storm and Juggernaut at that point. Spider-Man's going to be really fun. He has a lot of power. You could also go Cosmo and Maximus at that point. All of these things are fine. Dakin only has the 1 kill, though, of Killmonger, so be careful. You could also run Colleen Wing in this deck instead of Nova. There's, again, several ways to do this. It's all the exact same gist. You have the deck, you have the Forge deck and Absorbing Man combo. Then you can drop both of those and Killmonger on 5. That's why no Sarah. And then you've still got like Brood and Surfer on the last turn to win the game. Or Spider-Man and Surfer, whatever nonsense you want to do. Or Shanna is still like a lot of power as a 3/2. She's on average putting 1/2s on the board, right? So she's a 3/4, 3/6, 3/8 on average, right? Okay, that's a great stat line. We're doing a ton of work with Dazzler to get there. There might be something here, but like probably bad. I'm not like gonna lie to you, but look, we're doing our best with Shanna, who they can't seem to nail as a card. This might just need a redesign. Crystal. It is Crystal time. Let's talk fast because my battery saver is on. We are not plugged in. Let's go Crystal. All right, Crystal is. This is the deck I was talking to you about earlier that I completely love and I think is nuts and you should be playing. I have named it Kitchen Sink because it does everything. This deck was yesterday running Magic. And what Magic does is it says you have an extra turn to have mana to do everything you can to stop me. Well, now you don't. So this is a Conquest specific deck. This Conquest specific deck wants to... Oh my battery savers drive me nuts. I'm trying to go fast, battery savers. Stop bothering me. All right. This Conquest specific deck is because it has so many different play lines. You can just go Torch into Carnage, right? If you know they're not running Killmonger, they're not running Shang. You play Torch, Carnage, and nothing else. You move, you play Phoenix, right? And then you move that Torch around until it gets nice and big. On turn 4, you make it a, 14, then you make it a 28, and then you drop Taskmaster. And now you have 2 28 power things on the last turn of the game. Enjoy. That's going to win you a fair amount of games of Snap, right? They are playing Shang-Chi. You can kill your multiple men and drag 8 power multiple men all over the board. Or you can go Shuri into Nimrod, and then you have your Carnage and Venom and add a Deathlock play to guarantee that you have the right number of kills. So that if you killed something early, you're not screwed out of killing the Nimrod late. Okay, well, what if they are going to Shang and I can't stop it? You can spend the last turn of your game, especially if this happens a lot in multiple man games, where you go like Shuri Red Skull on 5 and you know they're going to try and Shang that because they can't otherwise beat it. But you've got priority because you've got 8 million Phoenix Forces and a Red Skull. They can go over you in one place and assume Shang is going to the other. Just drop armor, enjoy your win. This deck has been absolutely dominating. Absolutely dominating with Magic in that crystal spot. So what Crystal does is she says on turn 3, instead of having an extra turn to draw my bullshit, I'll just draw it now so I can make better decisions. Did I draw Shuri? Did I draw Phoenix Force? What am I doing going forward? Did I draw Taskmaster? And now I want to try and aim for that Human Torch play. Like, it's just an extra powerful thing to do. Is it better than Magic? That remains to be seen, but I think this is likely to be its best home. This is the other deck I'm really excited about. And like, this deck, again, I got an infinity ticket with it. It's going to get its own video at some point where I say a lot of the same things, I'm not going to lie. But this deck is great, and it beats the living crap out of Dark All Good stuff and all that move nonsense that's going around. It just don't care. It's like, oh, that's cute. You've got your 19 power. Well, I've got 28 power here, 28 power there, and then a bunch of 8 power things floating around. Good luck, right? Or even if it's 14/14 and a bunch of 8 power things, like those decks just aren't handling that, especially because you have the mana for armor. Um, that's the big loss, by the way, of Magic. On turn 7, you could Taskmaster and armor. You won't be able to do that anymore. You're gonna have to like sacrifice that Taskmaster for armor, but you should still win that matchup relatively often anyway. And again, if we go back to Magic and this we go back to Magic, the deck is great though, and you should really try it. Let's keep going. Why are we not going? There we go. Andrew Duel's Resonance. We talked about this ages ago. It was running a Ebony Maw and a Adam Warlock to draw its combo pieces. And it was running. So I cut both of those cards because, like, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there's this card called Killmonger, and it's really bad for that combo, right? Like a lot of games that would win because what it really wants to do is like go Wong, Mystique, Spectrum, and then just make all your things get like 12 extra power and win the game that way. But like you would get 12 extra power on that Ebony Maw, and then it would just be like Shang, and you'd be like, oh, that was fun. And then you lose the game, right? So what I wanted to do with this instead is I said, okay, well, I know I'm going to need a combo piece, right? I want to see that Wong. I want to see that Mystique. I want to see these cards. So instead, I'm going to run Crystal. And that Crystal is an extra shot at Wong. This could also run America, to be completely honest, but like I couldn't quite fit it. That would have to be Howard, but now you're making your Spectrum much worse, whatever. I also added a Sarah with the extra spot because at the end of the game, if you didn't see a combo piece, now you can play Iron Lad for 3 or 2 with Zabu and still hit it and still play other important cards at the same time. For example, Hazmat and Luke Cage are now 2. So now you spent 4 energy on Iron Lad, Luke Cage, and Hazmat. That seems pretty good, right? There's a lot of ways to win with this deck now. You could last turn of the game with Sarah and Zabu play a 2 power Wong into a Hazmat that still have 2 energy left. Sorry, still have like 3 energy left. This deck probably wants Absorber Man now that I think of it. So I think I might actually cut Lad for Absorber Man. It's pretty close. It's one of those 2 cards though. Or I mean maybe it's just cut Invisible Woman and say, are you running the right counters? Beat me. But this deck should be very consistent, very powerful, and very fun. Forever ago, we were playing Safety Hella deck. This is my favorite version of it. It was running Howard the Duck or Echo. I think it just runs Crystal because it has the different play lines. And if you have Magic and Crystal along with Jubilee, you see every card in in the deck. And if you see every card in the deck with this game, you're probably going to win that game. Snap. Again, barring Cosmo, but Cosmo is slowly disappearing from the meta again. So this deck should be back. It should really, really work and should be stealing cubes again. This is, again, the kind of deck that those move decks have very little to do about as long as you don't foolishly play your Tribunal. You have to actually be careful with your Tribunal because he is shankable. And you can have too much power stacked in one lane, and then if you Tribunal, you're dead. Remember, you don't have to get to 60 power in every lane to win against the modern Darkhawk deck styles things with this. So don't stress that. If you're playing the Darkhawk deck, though, Invisible Woman is extraordinarily important. Assume that she's going to get. Assume that Invisible Woman is going to get either rogued or enchantress against Darkhawk. That's totally fine. As if they've rogued or enchantress that, then you have free reign to go Iron Man Onslaught Tribunal and you win the game. Enjoy yourself. You don't have to go for the MODOK Hella playline. MODOK Hella playline is great, but this deck can win other ways. This is a really, really great deck. We've talked about a lot on the channel. I think Crystal is a really powerful card, probably better than Howard in this deck. Is this our last deck? Yeah, that was our last deck. Finally. All right, Pete. My computer didn't die on me. So we're all aces now. This is the negative surfer that's been everywhere. I decided that so like you know how seeing negative is really important to negative? You couldn't really guarantee that on when Crystal costs 4, but on turn 3, you can just play. If you didn't see negative, you can drop Magic or Crystal on 3 to give yourself an extra turn to see negative and get your deck going. If your deck is going, this is crazy powerful, right? And what Crystal fundamentally means is you don't even necessarily need that extra turn for Magic. Obviously, you'll take it, but you don't need it. Also, Legion is getting a little less play. Not a ton, but a little less play, so Magic can sort of sneak back in. And remember that this deck still puts out completely crazy power, going completely wild with it. Even if it's just going long Mystique Ironheart, that's a ton of power all over the board, right? Let alone the like completely bonkers Surfer, Iron Man shenanigans type things it can do. I was not a big fan of this deck. Longtime viewers will remember, but I think Crystal makes a real difference here, and now I'm actually getting a little worried about it. So hopefully Legion 6 in the meta, because I could see this being kind of OP. All right, that is our decks for the OTA day. I hope you liked them. Jeez, that was, I believe, 16 decks, but 2 were similar. So let's call that 15 decks. If you like what we do here on the channel, again, we would super appreciate you subscribing, checking us out. If you didn't find a deck here, I'm really sorry, 1. And 2, did you know that if you join the Marvel Snap Zone Discord, I will help you build a deck? I absolutely promise you. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow for another Snap Take, first thing in the morning. Peace.